So, how does your diaphragm, core, and pelvic floor interact? And how does this interaction affect your entire body? So, let's think about this as an abdominal canister where the diaphragm is on the top, the core, which is made up of your transverse abdominis, your internal obliques, and your multifidi, and the pelvic floor is on the bottom. So this canister creates the stability for your spine, and it does this by regulating and creating pressure. We need this pressure to help support and stabilize our spine, but too much pressure that can cause hernias, your diastasis, and pelvic floor issues. So let's look at how this pressure system works. On our inhale, as you bring in the air, your diaphragm is going to go down, putting pressure on your abdominal wall and down into the pelvic floor. And then on the exhale, all of this is going to reverse with your pelvic floor rising and your abdominal wall coming back in and your diaphragm going up. So you can think about your core as a pressure canister. And to heal your diastasis or prolapse or any pelvic floor dysfunction you might have, we need to learn to regulate and control that pressure. Because when one of these pieces is not functioning correctly, dysfunction is sure to follow. Because without the stability of the spine and pelvis, the structures above and below will not be in a correct alignment. So think about your neck or your shoulders or your hips and the pain that sometimes they're in. So thinking about a postpartum woman, when you have a baby, your the baby pushes up on your diaphragm, it pushes out on your core, and it pushes down on your pelvic floor. So most postpartum women who have issues, and then we're not talking about those ladies who just pop back and nothing's an issue at all, but those of us who have issues generally have a core imbalance. So between your rectus abdominis, your transverse abdominis, and your obliques, there's an imbalance. You have ineffective diaphragms. So often we become shallow breathers or belly breathers because of the placement of the baby and that diaphragm having been pushed up. And we may have ineffective or an overworked pelvic floor. So what this means is we're not regulating the pressure in this canister correctly to stabilize your pelvis and spine. So how does that impact the rest of our body? When your pelvis and spine doesn't have the stability it needs, look at what can happen. We'll start to get an increased activity of your TFL to stabilize your pelvis. Now, your TFL is one of your hip flexors. And this guy comes in because somebody has to stabilize your pelvis. So it takes on the role when your pressure canister is not doing its job. And the TFL will overwork to help stabilize this. That also means our psoas, so one of our other hip flexor muscles, is going to overwork to help stabilize your spine. Now, as the psoas tightness happens, because it's working harder as a spinal stabilizer, so it's going to lock down and tighten, which means it's going to pull on your back of your spine at your diaphragm, which in turn will flare out your ribs. Flared out ribs will decrease your core control and diaphragm even further. And the more you lose core control, the more you increase your TFL tightness to compensate for the psoas, which then decreases your glute activation because as the TFL gets tighter, it starts doing the job of the glutes and it shuts your glutes down. Now, the more your glutes shut down, the more it increases the pelvic floor activation because you need great glutes to help support your pelvic floor. So when your pelvic floor gets tight, that means it rises. And think about that pressure system that we just went through. If your pelvic floor is tight and is already risen, your diaphragm won't work properly because it can't get that really good breath down to regulate the pressure. So all in all, we get a huge, big, messed up situation because nobody is doing their job. So now you know why I keep going on about the hip flexor program to be done in combination with the core programs so that we can realign and get everybody doing the right job. Now, I really hope that you guys will join me in the bonus that's going to be happening in the Total Core Solution Belly Blast program. This is like the very first start of the bonus that I'm going to be doing. We're going to be talking about breathing and different exercises to get this breathing under control. If you're a belly breather, we're going to teach you how to stop being a belly breather and get that full expansion. Lots of different exercises. We're going to look at glute activation and how to get your glutes working and get them stronger. We're also going to look at everyday activities and how you can do those safely, along with some stretches because, well, when we're nursing or we're sitting in front of a computer, our backs and everything gets so sore. So we're going to look at extra stretches for those. So I really hope that you will join me in that. I hope this was useful for you as well. And please let me know. It just makes so much sense when you start seeing what happens with one thing and how that waterfall effects happens throughout your body. But it all comes back to the breathing. The breathing is so important to get right. Okay, I will chat again with you later.